this time, right? So we'll just wait and not take any votes until that happens.
All right, so if we want to go live?
Sure.
Okay, let's go live.
Yeah. Somebody give me a thumbs up when we're ready to go.
That's quorum.
Okay, Emily's here too. All right, good morning, everyone. Today is April 4th. We are going to be starting our TIDC meeting today. At this time, if we can take attendance.
The Honorable Missy Maderi,
I'm here.
Mr. James Jim Ethke, the Honorable Jimmy Blacklock,
Here.
Mr. Alex Brennan,
Here.
Mr. Jay Cohen, the Honorable Valerie Covey, the Honorable Brandon Creighton, the Honorable Richard Evans,
Here.
the Honorable Emily Miskell,
Here.
the Honorable Joe Moody, the Honorable David Scheck, the Honorable John Smithy, Honorable James Woolley.
Here.
Judge, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time then, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December 6th, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Missy Maderi. I am the new chair of TIDC. I was elected last year by you all, and I had Judge Keller continue to run the meetings from last year. This is my first report and leading this, so with the help of staff, I'm sure I'm going to be able to get through this, but thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Missy Maderi. I am the 5th Administrative Region Presiding Judge. I'm also the 347th District Court Judge, and I've sat on TIDC for approximately, I think, 8 years. I'm going to take over for Sharon Keller, who obviously has big shoes to fill because she was the chair for the history of TIDC since it was started in 2001. I talked to Judge Keller the other day by text, and I was kind of like, wow, taking over this in a legislative year is a lot of work. So I do tip my hat to Judge Keller for all of her years of service and what she has done for the communities in the state of Texas. Wanted to note a few changes to the board at this time. First of all, we're going to start having tacos in the morning. And so I wanted to say, we have lost Williamson County Judge Bill Gravel after only one meeting when he was put on. He's taken a position with the Trump administration as part of the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Advocacy representing business interests in New Mexico, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas, and we wish him well in his new position. Today we have with us also 2 new board members in person, and the third one is going to be on Zoom. I think
Yes, he's there.
he's there. Okay, great. First of all, we would like to welcome Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court, Jimmy Blacklock. He replaces Nathan Heck. Chief Justice Blacklock was appointed Chief Justice by Governor Abbott in January and has served on the Texas Supreme Court since 2018. Before joining the court, Chief Justice Blacklock served as Governor Abbott's general counsel and in the Attorney General's office under then AG Abbott. As Chief Justice, he's an ex officio member of the TIDC board. Welcome, Chief. On a little side note, when we kind of reintroduced each other last time I saw him, he has obviously a better memory than I do, probably because he's much younger than I am. But he indicated that when I interviewed for the presiding judge of the 5th Region, I had a grilling of 5 different gentlemen, and he was one of those gentlemen that did that. And I remember thinking, did I do a good enough job, which I guess I did since I got the appointment. But thank you very much, Chief. Second, we welcome Court of Criminal Appeals Presiding Judge David Schenck, who replaces Sharon Keller. Presiding Judge Schenck took office in January after previously serving as a justice on the 5th Court of Appeals in Dallas, chair of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, and Deputy Attorney General for Legal Counsel. Most recently, he practiced appellate law for Dykema in their Dallas office. as Court of Criminal Appeals presiding judge. He is an ex officio member of the TIDC board. Thank you and welcome to you. Third new member we have is Representative John Smithy, Chair of the House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. Chair Smithy represents House District 86, serving 7 counties in the Panhandle, including 3 served by the Panhandle Area Public Defender's Office. He has served in the House since 1985. Representative Smithy is a partner at the Smithy and Russell Law Firm in Amarillo. As the House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee Chair, he also serves as an ex officio member of the TIDC board. Welcome, Representative Smithy. Representative Joe Moody, who was the previous House Criminal Jurisprudence Chair, has been appointed by House Speaker Dustin Burrows to serve on the Judicial Council and take the place of Representative Reggie Smith. Unfortunately, Representative Moody could not make it today, but we welcome him as well. So there's a lot of big changes on TIDC, and really it's kind of a new era after 2001 and Judge Keller serving this long. I'm looking forward to it. So we welcome our 3 new members at this time. And what I'd like to do is have, if they want to, say something briefly, starting with Chief Justice Blacklock, then presiding Judge Schenk, and then Chair Smithy. After that, I'd like the people to go around the room and kind of introduce ourselves to the others, because I remember when I first got on here, you just don't know anybody, right? You don't know where everybody's coming from, and you're trying to Google their names very quickly. So, Chief, if you'd like to say something.
Well, I'm just happy to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair, for stepping up and handling this. I know it's a lot of work and we appreciate it. And appreciate everyone else's service on the commission. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I echo that. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's an honor. I know that you've come from all over the state. You've been doing this for a while. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and learning. For those who don't know, Chief Justice Blacklock and I worked together for, 2 years over at the AG's office. We're looking forward to working with you and again, learning from you. And Justice Miskell, good to see you again.
Great, thank you. Representative Smithy, would you like to say something?
Well, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm very happy about being on the board. Look forward to working with you. I'm just kind of learning as I go. So I really appreciate what the commission's doing.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, Alex, you want to start?
Okay, I'm Alex Bunnan. I'm the Chief Public Defender for Harris County, an office that started about 15 years ago. By statute, there has to be a public defender on the commission, and I've been in that role since 2017.
I'm J.R. Woolley. I'm the Justice of the Peace in Waller County. And last session, they added a Justice of the Peace for somebody who regular magistrates to the TIDC board, and the governor appointed me to that position.
I'm Sarah Gamble, the research director at TIDC, and I've been here, I've labbed 2 years now, so getting the hang of things.
I'm Deborah Stewart. I'm a fiscal monitor here at TIDC. I've been here 11 years.
Good morning, Megan LeBoy. I'm the administrative director for the Office of Court Administration.
Good morning, I'm Doriana. I am on the grants team with Edwin, and as of a few days ago, I've been here for 8 years.
I'm Wesley Shackelford. I'm deputy director of the commission, and I've been here since 2002, one of the original 5.
Wow.
2 of us still here.
Edwin Colfax, I'm the Director of Grant Funding at TIDC, and I've been at TIDC since 2010.
Megan?
Megan Bradbury, I'm the office coordinator here at TIDC, been here for about 6 years.
Good morning, I'm Bill Cox. I'm the Director of Public Defense Improvement, and I've been here since 2021.
Good morning, I'm Kristen Meeks. I'm a senior policy analyst who works with Bill on the improvement team, and I've been here for a little over 3 years.
Good morning, I'm Sharon Whitfield, also with the grants team, and as Wesley said, I've been here since the beginning.
I'm Jay Cohen. I'm in private practice out of Houston, and I've been here, I guess, a couple of years. I still feel like a new guy, but I guess there's some people taking my place.
Hi, my name is Eric Schneider, and I'm a grant specialist on the grants team as well.
I'm Joel Lawrence. I'm a policy monitor.
I'm Crystal Leff-Pignon. I'm the Director of Family Protection Representation, and I've been here for about 3.5 years. First came to collect data on family representation, and it has since evolved into a whole division, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Scott Ehlers. I'm the Executive Director for the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, and I've been here since 2016, been the Executive Director for about a year and a half.
Great. Thank you all very much. And also, before we get to the director's report, I hear it's your birthday. So happy birthday, Crystal.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
my birthday.
Yeah, thank you for spending it with us, right?
Thank you, Judge. No other place I'd rather be.
I understood.
And I might add that I'm here. Bandera County Judge, I'm in my 29th year, and I came on the commission when Bethke was running, so I've been here a while. So anyway, glad to be here.
Hi, I'm also on the call, Judge Valerie Covey, County Commissioner in Williamson County. I've been on for several years, and I look forward to seeing you guys in person soon.
Thank you. Emily?
I'm Emily Miskell. I'm a justice on our 5th Court of Appeals in Dallas, and I have been on TIDC all the way since our January meeting.
All right, great. Thank you all very much. All right, at this time, then I am going to turn it over to Scott for the director's report. Scott?
Great. Thank you, Judge Maderi. Wanted to start things off with some sad news. Unfortunately, Natalie Corvington, who was working on our family protection representation team, as well as our policy monitoring team, unfortunately had to leave us last month. We are attempting to hire a communication specialist right now, have had some difficulties in that regard. We're looking to speed up our production of our reports and improve them, as well as, our various publications and other communications that we do, a lot of communications. So we're going to be reposting that position. So if any of you know a good fit, please let me know. Recent activities, a lot going on, particularly around the legislature. On March 11th, we had an educational forum for the legislative staff, members, as well as the public at the Capitol Auditorium. It was called Defending Liberty, Challenges and Solutions for Protecting the Right to Counsel. We talked about the challenges that the state is facing in regards to particularly attorney shortages, but also all the good things that TIDC has been doing. Talked about our legislative appropriations requests as well as our other legislative proposals. Back in January, we had a webinar really directed at legislative staff as well to talk about the Justice Beyond the Cities report that the Public Policy Research Institute did for us at the behest of the legislature to just, talk about all of their findings. There's been quite a bit of media coverage over the last few months. There was a New York Times / Texas Tribune article on March 25th regarding Maverick County and some of the problems that they are facing. And so we're going to be talking about Maverick County in more detail during the policies and standards section of our meeting today. There's also been a Texas Scorecard article about Operation Lone Star, as well as the Texas Tribune ran something in February about the attorney shortages that Texas is facing. On the legislative front, direct legislative front, we had a couple of Gideon resolutions passed on March 18th in commemoration of the 62nd anniversary of the Gideon versus Wainwright decision. Had a resolution sponsored by Senator Zaffarini in the Senate. And thank you, Chair Smithy, for sponsoring the House resolution as well. I've had some testimony before the Senate Finance Committee, House Appropriations 145 Subcommittee, also before the House Criminal Jurisprudence Organizing Committee. And Crystal Left-Pignon testified recently before the Senate Committee on Jurisprudence regarding our legislative proposal around family protection representation fee schedules. If you look at the bottom of page 15, you will see a table that outlines where we're at in regards to our legislative appropriations requests, our exceptional items. As a reminder, we on item number 1, we were seeking originally $12 million. We raised it to $19 million for our shortfall in our general revenue dedicated account. And the House and Senate have both given us approximately $10 million to fill that shortfall. Regarding the pipeline program to address attorney shortages, neither the House or the Senate has appropriated anything to us at this point, but they've put funds into what's called Article 11, which is something they might fund. So it's sitting to the side, waiting for members to become excited about it and say, yes, we should give money to TIDC for this. Family protection representation. The House has our full ask of $47.5 million, and that is once again in Article 11. The Senate unfortunately did not give us anything even in Article 11. And then for our exceptional item requesting new and expanded public defender offices, the House has appropriated $17.5 million in general revenue. The Senate, they were going to appropriate $8.7 million for that item. And so what's going to happen is the bill will get through the House. It's in the House at this point. And then a conference committee will meet between both the Senate and the House, and they will make their final decisions as to what will be in our budget as well as all other agencies. On item 16, you will see a comparison of our existing budget for our current biennium compared to the House and Senate proposals and where they're at. You'll see overall, compared to last biennium, the House has us at an additional $18.7 million, whereas the Senate has us at an additional $9 million. And then finally, you'll see a summary of the Article 11 items below that. I've talked about the attorney pipeline and family protection items in Article 11. You'll also see $30 million here in the House for improved indigent defense practices and procedures. That refers to you may recall that the board approved a resolution in December for a legislative proposal to give TIDC 1% of mixed beverage alcohol taxes to go into the fair defense account because of that nexus between DWI and indigent defense expenditures. And so that is in our omnibus bill right now. And so if that omnibus bill were to pass, then we would have an additional $30 million in the fair defense account. Other legislative provisions related to our budget. So one significant item is the first one listed here under that bullet point, the Office of Capital and Forensic Writs. There is a funding swap. And so what the legislature has done is, as you may recall, OCFW's budget historically has come out of the fair defense account. And so what they decided to do was give OCFW general revenue and no longer have them taking their budget from the fair defense account. And so that will free up about $7.7 million, and that will then accumulate at this point into the fair defense account for next biennium. There's also $5.1 million in HB 500, the supplemental appropriations bill. There's a couple of budget riders of note. There is one to require us to establish a public defender office in Wharton and Matagorda counties. That is in the Senate and the House. And then there was a rider added in the House to also require us to establish a regional public defender in Terrell and Val Verde counties. And there's conversations going on right now about the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office basically taking on, expanding and going into those counties. In both of these situations, these counties had already come to us last summer to get a grant from us. And unfortunately, we did not have the funds to fund that office. So they are now basically earmarked in the budget to have offices if they remain in the budget. Let's see, in terms of our other legislative proposals, the big one is SB 2111 and HB 4915. That is our omnibus bill. If you go to page 18 through 22, you will see all of both our legislative proposals that were approved by the board as well as other bills of note. Regarding Operation Lone Star, arrests are significantly down. They're from December to February, excuse me. And we're going to later on be talking about some grant modifications that are due in part to these reduced arrest levels. So we will be discussing that further in the grant section of the board book. And finally, we're on the verge of closing out our grant with LPDO. And so by the June board meeting, I anticipate I will be able to report to you that that is officially closed. That's all I have. Were there any questions for me on all of that?
Any questions, guys?
I have a question, Judge, Scott, on the public this is Valerie Covey, on the public defender office. Could you remind us how it's funded? I think we give some seed money. I think there's a match perhaps by the local county or counties. And then could you explain how it's funded going forward?
Okay, that is correct. It really depends on what kind of public defender office we're talking about. So a single county office or one that's serving an urban area or even, a mid-sized county area, those are funded under our traditional model, which is TIDC funds 80% of the office in year one. And then the next year it goes down to 60%, then 40, then 20. And then in year 5, the county would be fully responsible for the costs of the office. If it is a rural regional public defender office, which typically handles only those counties that are 100,000 population or less, we will fund 80% of that office in year 1, and then years 2 and beyond, we will fund 2/3 of the cost of the office. And in both cases, the county is responsible for any costs related to private assigned counsel.
And so that regional office is a continual funding for how long?
At this point, as long as there is money available to TIDC, then it is an ongoing grant as long as there are funds available.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Scott? Okay, Dr. Gamble?
Yes, thank you. I am reporting on pages 24 and 25. I've got 2 things to report out today. One is we are still working on our overhaul of our data website. It's been a little over a year that we've been in this process. This past November, we had 2 of our mandated reports moved to this data portal. The Indigent Defense Expenditure Report, which you'll hear a little bit more from other folks on the team, and the Attorney Practice Time Report. Since then, we've been really focusing on, and there's just a screenshot of all the reports that we need to create for staff to improve efficiencies, to understand and digest all this data that comes into us.
Sarah, maybe for the new members, maybe give them a little insight as to what's in those reports. And these are statutorily required data reports we have to collect from the counties.
I won't steal Edwin's thunder, who will share some more, but the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report is a report that comes from the auditors. And so all 254 counties are telling us how much they spent, what cases happened in their county for indigent defense. That's kind of a high level. Add anything in.
Oh, we also get case loads for all the attorneys, individual attorneys, and how much work they're in.
And how much they've been paid
And how much
over
they've
the
been paid.
previous year.
And then we also simultaneously collect from attorneys, this is self-reported, from attorneys, how much time they're spending, their percent of time they spent for indigent defense. And they divide it up by county, and they divide it up, by category, which we have as criminal, juvenile delinquency, and then FPR, just kind of those 3 buckets.
FPR being.
I'm sorry. We gotta get rid of these acronyms, Family Protection Representation. So, any questions or additions? Okay, so we have those up on the data portal. And now we are working on those reports. Once we kind of get a handle on those and staff have what they need to analyze the data, we're gonna shift over to get the indigent defense plans from the counties on this new website data portal. And I should have said a little background, this data portal that we've been using is as old as the agency, it's 20 years old. And so it's been very much in need of some updates. And so we're looking to start that in these upcoming months, well in advance to give time for our staff to train the judges that have to report their indigent defense plans for their different courts and their county. Any questions on that? I realize I'm like the square peg non-attorney in this school. Okay, also wanted to report on an analysis that we're working on to kind of supplement our understanding from the Justice Beyond the Cities. You know, the strong finding came out that there's an attorney crisis, a shortage of indigent defense attorneys. And so we're looking under the hood of our data, our attorney practice time data, and then the data that auditors are submitting on each and every court and how much attorneys are getting paid. We've taken those two data sets, we've matched them with the state bar data to give us some understanding of where these folks live, not like we're stalking them, but you know, what is their home county? And so one of the first things we've looked at, and this is on page 25, is, and I'm skipping ahead, is how many of these folks say, hey, I'm from Dallas, Texas, but what percent of them are spending time outside of that county? The majority of the time they spend with indigent defense outside of the county. Thus far, we found, and it may be no surprise to you, you know, roughly when we put all the urban attorneys, those are attorneys that we categorize as being from counties of 100,000 population or more, which we can talk later about our classifications. 13% of them are spending time outside of their county. So most of them are staying at home in the county that they say they are from. But on the other end, when we look at those in the rural categories, 52% of them are spending the majority of their time outside of their counties serving indigent defense. So our rural attorneys are, you know, behind the wheel a lot, moving around the state to serve. That's one of our findings we found. Another is we took a look at, you know, what law schools our attorneys were coming from. We do a lot for recruiting and just want to be strategic with our time. And so we have a list of top 10, you know, this is the top 10 list of attorneys. They reported to the state bar where they went to law school. We matched it and said, okay, these are our attorneys. This isn't by strength, which attorneys, you know, spend the most time on indigent defense, what, you know, law school, it's the majority of them, this ranking are coming from these schools. So St. Mary's is the top school that serves our state with indigent defense. And interesting maybe to you is number 10 is Oklahoma. And so our team, they'll report out, went up to Oklahoma to do some strategic recruiting. And then one last thing that to report out for now is we looked at how many attorneys licensed the same year are coming into indigent defense. So if they were licensed in 2023, how many of them are coming into our space of indigent defense? It's very, very low. It is 0.23%. It's not even really a whole number there. But 15 attorneys out of the 2,533 came into the work. And so this is just some of the stuff that we're starting to analyze just to help understand climate a little bit better. Questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
That's a good question. The universe of respondents here, this is statewide. Do we know what percentage of people providing indigent defense are actually reporting to us?
So this is, this should be close to 100% because this is coming from the auditors. We're taking both the list from the auditors and from what the attorney says. It's more likely there are more on that auditor list than on that.
The auditor list is coming county by county and we're
By
scooping up
county.
254.
Yeah, so this is they're turning in what happened in their court.
And the data you've gathered does include how far out of law school they are or just that whether they're their first year out of school?
It shows us their license date. This is the state bar data has just license date. So it doesn't show their age, if that helps.
If we wanted to, we could plot on a chart how far out.
Yes.
We have a lot of people 50 years out providing indigent defense.
We do.
I'll bet we do.
Yeah, we're working on all that plotting too, yeah.
That was one of the big findings from the Public Policy Research Institute report that they did for us. The average number of years that an indigent defense or rural indigent defense attorney had been practicing was 23 and a half years. That's the average.
But that
So,
doesn't mean just practicing indigent defense, just to be clear, but practicing attorneys.
but those are the ones who,
Yeah.
right, we're taking indigent defense cases in a rural county, right?
And something we're looking at in our data, not to get too far into the weeds, because I know I can. But I'm looking at the buckets, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the buckets to say, what's the duration of time folks are spending in indigent defense? And how many times do they leave? Do we get back? Which will be an important finding for us, that loss and gain.
Do we know whether they're just handling trials and pleas or also appeals? Do we have that data? Is there a difference, material difference between appellate counsel and trial counsel in that respect?
Yes, we have it broken down in appeals by juvenile, adult delinquency. I haven't looked at it to that, degree yet.
Yeah, and the auditor info we're getting, those are paid cases. So any attorney who was paid on a case, we have that data.
One of the interesting things I think is that, we're having an issue bringing in younger individuals, and our population of people that are doing indigent defense are aging out.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably Alex.
One of the reasons is there's usually some requirement to take appointments. So somebody right out of law school may not meet that requirement.
That's what I was gonna add. I know in Collin County, we required at least 2 years of experience before you could be on the wheel to take appointed cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm also saying is, it's not only just that, it's individuals that have been there 10, 12 years, the individuals just don't believe a lot in indigent defense that we're finding out. And I mean, I think a lot of individuals do, but there's people that are working 10 to 12 years and they're not getting paid a lot of the times. And I mean, in Nueces and Hidalgo and Cameron, where my region is, a lot of the lawyers, I'm like, are you on the list? Can I appoint you? And they're like, yeah, no, I'm not on that list anymore. And so we're finding out a lot of those individuals, our first degree felony list in Nueces County, used to be 50 or 60 individuals on there. There's like 21 people on there now. So
Nueces County adjusted its pay scale.
like a year ago, and it's still not enough, right? I mean, Nueces is broke though. I mean, everybody is, but yeah, I mean, we don't, we increased it, I think about a year and a half ago, and it's still, they just don't want to do it. So, Jim?
Morning, Judge. To Justice Miskel's point, I would like to kind of expand this little bit of research that we did regarding like how many new lawyers came in like their first year. I think it would be important to expand that to within the first couple of years, because to her point, there are counties out there who you can't even get on the list straight out of law school.
Yeah, it's a high standard, and I will say that a lot of this group of attorneys, they're going into our offices because of the engine that, the pathway provides them to get some training and things like that as a young attorney. Anyway, but yes.
You're referring to offices that we funded through our
Yes,
grants.
I'm sorry, public defense offices that we funded through our grant or not managed as council as much. It's the public defense offices.
Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Campbell? So Jim Bethke came in, we kind of went around and introduced ourselves. So Jim is when I became chair, I made him our vice chair. And so if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Good morning. I'm Jim Bethke. I'm currently the executive director of the Bexar County Managed Sign Council Program, and then served in Scottsboro for about 16 years before moving back to Lubbock to help modernize that office. And really glad to be back part of the team.
Great. Thanks, Jim. All right, let's proceed forward then, Emily, or Justice Miskel. Do you have the grants and reporting? So we have really two big committees. We have grants and reporting, and then we have policies and standards. And I put Justice Miskell on, I was the chair of grants and reporting. And so when I became chair, I asked Justice Miskell to take over grants and reporting. And then Alex to my left has been policies and standards for, since I've been here. So Justice Miskell, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, and I will turn it over to Edwin.
Thank you, Justice Miskell. Just as Judge Maderi would do. I'll start on page 27 of your meeting materials with just a quick update on our collection of county indigent defense expenditure data that was mentioned a few minutes ago. We're still in the process of conducting a desk review. We do this every year where we look at each report to try to identify any errors that jump out so that we can really have confidence in the data. So that process is still ongoing and these numbers are still somewhat preliminary, but I did want to share them with you at this point. So for 2024, the county's reported spending a gross total of $458.5 million basically, which is up about 11.7% over the previous year. So a substantial increase. We had been seeing a steady increase in county indigent defense spending. It dipped during the couple years around COVID, but the growth in spending is still has resurfaced. It's certainly true that part of this increase in spending is related to increases in TIDC investments in local communities through grants because these are gross expenditures and some of that increase is offset by the investments that TIDC is making in a number of programs around the state. So we anticipate at our June meeting that the desk review will be all sewn up and we'll do some more detailed analysis of the expenditure data, but that's just a quick update for you at this point. Moving on, the next several pages in your meeting materials, beginning on page 28, are just a routine fiscal updates. The one I'll highlight is on page 28, and this reflects the revenue that's flowing into the Fair Defense account. As Scott mentioned, the legislature is on track to help us fill in a deficit in collections to the Fair Defense account that we've experienced in the last few years. That deficit is mostly due to the going away of our jury service fee revenue, or what we refer to on the page as juror pay revenue. TIDC formally collected about $6 million from that revenue source. That's basically gone away for a number of reasons. So the new investments that the legislature is making help to make up for that lost revenue. Looking at court cost collections at the top of the top chart on page 28, we do see some good news in the sense that court cost collections flowing into the account are increasing. We're up overall. Collections in the fund, setting aside the jury service fee component, are up 6% year over year. So that seems to have stabilized following the COVID years when it took a nosedive. That revenue is improving a little bit, so that's good news and more reliable revenue for us. Page 29 is just a standard update we provide on previous fiscal years where we still have open grants and open applications. The majority of this relates to the funding that that passed through the legislature to TIDC of ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding, or COVID relief funding. We got $14 million. We invested that through a number of grants to counties, and that's still being spent down, and that's the majority of the activity that's still outstanding for our previous fiscal years, but we are on track to spend down those funds over the balance of this year.
And it's due to be funded or to be finished by December of this year, is that correct?
That's right, the end of this calendar year.
And are each one of the grants that you are working and monitoring with right now, you know, I know like Nueces has a grant, right? We send in our reports to you all.
Yes.
Are all of the other counties doing the same thing, and are they on track to zero balances come December when we can't spend it anymore?
Yes, we have worked with our finance folks to make sure that we're obligating the funds to be able to spend them down and maximize the benefit for Texas. So far, so good. Page 30 is just our budget to actuals to date update. We still have not finalized the formula grant funding. We have budgeted 17 million for county formula grants. After we finish our desk review, the IDER, we will be able to allocate that to all the counties and then get that money out the door. So that will happen before the June board meeting. And then we have basically a quarter's worth of improvement grants. There's a kind of lag time depending on the expenditure reporting because almost all of our grants are paid out on a reimbursement basis. But everything's on track essentially there.
For the new people, can you just give us a distinction between formula grants and improvement grants?
Absolutely. So TIDC provides formula funding to, all counties are eligible for formula funding, which is based on 50% on county population and 50% on reported indigent defend expenditures in the previous year. So we take the budget that is settled on by the commission, and this year it's $17 million for that program. We run the calculation based on that weighting, population and previous year's expenditures, and then distribute that money based on an allocation or formula to all the counties that are eligible. There are typically a very tiny number of counties, 1 or 2, where they don't meet a spending threshold, so they don't qualify because if they're very small and their spending went down, they don't have an increase in costs that we're trying to offset with that program. But that's formula grant funding. Improvement grant funding, we're referring to project-specific grants like rural regional public defender offices, for example, that where counties apply. We have an annual application cycle. Counties come to us with proposals. We often work very closely with them to refine those proposals, vet the budgets, help them construct plans and proposals through our improvement teams, planning studies that we provide. So that's our project-specific funding. Any questions about any of that so far?
Yeah, Edwin, this is Valerie Covey again. I was just wondering on page 27, you know, we're looking at the total amount for indigent defense. That's a really big number. Does that include the public defender's offices?
Yes, it would, that number reflects the gross amount of spending by all of the counties that were reported to us, that including some of the spending that is reimbursed by some of our grant programs.
Yeah. You know, I know that with our discussion on the attorneys and the availability or lack of, my guess is that I know for Williamson County with our benefits, it's extremely expensive to have an employee, especially an attorney. And so there's got to be a look at both the availability as well as counteracted by the cost of just bringing in a public defender's office and what that looks like, especially for counties that are not going to get the ongoing support, 2/3 support, you know. So I assume that y'all are doing that to help counties figure that out. That may be one thing that we're looking at. Is that accurate?
So yes, our improvement team headed by Bill Cox works with all kinds of counties, urban and rural, to do what we refer to as planning studies, where we do an analysis of the caseloads for indigent cases in their region. We look at the number of attorneys and support staff that would be required for a public defender approach. We also have done these kinds of studies to look at managed assigned counsel systems, where private counsel provides the representation under the umbrella of a support organization that provides some oversight and resources for the lawyers. But so we certainly are looking at all kinds of urban and rural programs and offer that planning study service to any county that comes to us.
I don't know. I mean, when we looked at how many attorneys there are going back to that, are we having a decline in people becoming attorneys or just those that want to do this type work?
I think it's the data that our research director has been talking about indicates that it's fewer people willing to move into indigent defense type work.
A continual increase in the number of just raw attorneys, any kind of attorney.
Yeah.
Coming in.
So I think it's, you know, we know that the fees that are offered for indigent cases are lower than market rates for people who would retain counsel for similar charges. And if someone's practice is such that they can make a better living and more money by focusing on retained business, then, you know, the economic incentive is there to take them in that direction and away from indigent representation. When one of the reasons that the Rural Regional Public Defender Program or public defender programs in general has been successful is because when you get these folks a position that's reliable, more people are willing to move into that, where they don't have to just hang out a shingle and cross their fingers that they'll get enough business. They can have a little bit more of a reliable professional pathway. So, but it is a challenge, and it definitely is in large part due to the economics of a private practice.
Yeah, and I can see that in especially areas of the state that don't have a ton of people to pull from. You know, I would think that in Williamson County, we have Austin right next door. We would have plenty if they would do it. And then it's a balancing act of how much it costs to actually employ versus contract. So anyway, thank you for your help, Edwin.
And I don't want to sidetrack, but I think there also is a separate issue of there are certain, like, for example, one complaint I've heard locally here in our Dallas area is there's a separate list for attorneys that are qualified to be appointed to capital cases. And that list is maintained at the administrative judicial region level, not at the county level. And I've heard that we're having a lot of retirements from that list, but as you can imagine, the criteria to get on that list are higher. And so I think that's even a separate area that requires more outreach. And I'm not going to hijack the discussion, but I just wanted to add that too.
The more specialized the representation, for example, you know, higher level felonies versus the misdemeanor wheel, the more intense many counties' attorney shortages are, and certainly in the capital context, that is a big challenge.
Can I ask who is coordinating the contract? To the extent we have, Scott and I talked about this the other day. I was in Vermont and talking to their public defenders people. A lot of it is being bid out to law firms, or when I say law firms in Vermont, to do it on a regional basis. Who on our side of this is sort of, if anyone, coordinating those types of efforts, so we don't have the concern of the overhead with benefits and the like?
At this point, it's really a county by county. If a county wants a contract with a lawyer, then, you know, that is certainly an eligible a means of providing the representation. TIDC, as we talked about, we do not have contracting authority ourselves. If there was a nonprofit organization, for example, that wanted to do like a contract, I mean, we would call it a grant, right? We only have grant making authority. We do not have contracting authority. So it's really, when it comes to contract defenders, it is a county by county situation.
There's no one coordinating that on a statewide, but I'll just, for what it's worth, throw out, I just came out of a very large law firm and I've spent a lot of time in them. The pro bono work that my firm was doing was objectionable to many people, and it was not getting people into courtrooms. The people we want taking on these indigent defenses are trying to get into large law firms where they don't get to try cases. And it would seem to me not terribly difficult to go to Baker Botts and other firms and say, if you'll take on a contract to handle X number of cases, we'll just give them to you. And you can send a lawyer who, you know, was law review at Coif at Ivy League Law School, and we'll let them get to a courtroom. And that might help bridge another generation of people who are perhaps interested in this kind of work.
Point out, I mean, that, yes, a big firm in a county like Harris, where we don't need their help, that would be fine. But these rural counties are in the middle of nowhere. And to get those lawyers
We
there.
can get a lawyer from Houston to Midland.
Hypothetically, yes, but on a regular basis, I don't know.
And
It
if I
could
may,
be pretty costly in the end.
one thing we've seen talking to new law grads, and Crystal go into it more on the recruitment report, which we talked about the improvement team, is frankly, it's the debt load of new law graduates coming out. They are very concerned about being able to make their loan payments and live on it. And so they're looking for a salary coming in. Similarly, when Operation Lone Star was starting, we reached out to firms across the state. And unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of appetite for interest in coming to help us deal with the challenges of providing representation with the significant influx of cases we were
I
seeing.
suspect that's because of the way that operation would be perceived by the management at most of our large law firms. But right now, they're sending lawyers to do pro bono work that they're not getting paid for at all. And that's a controversial subject inside these law firms, but if you could get them trying cases, I mean, retail criminal cases on a recurring, we did this at my firm at Hughes Luce in Dallas a long time ago. We had lawyers on loan to the DA's office, and eventually we shut that down because the lawyers we were loaning liked it so much, they left the law firm.
Interesting. All right, well, let's talk.
For no other questions, I think we're gonna go to Doriana Torres for a quick update on formula grant holds.
All right, thank you, Edwin. So really quick, when formula grants are awarded, we place special condition holds on their awards to counties that are not in compliance with plan reporting and grant requirements. The status of special conditions for FY 24 formula grants as of this morning. All counties have submitted their indigent defense expenditure reports. All counties have submitted their commissioners court resolutions. All counties have completed the approval process for their indigent defense plans. And 20 counties are not in compliance with court activity reporting requirements to the OCA or do not have an approved action plan in place. TIDC and OCA staff have been in touch with the counties listed. So since we printed these books, Maverick County and Titus County have submitted their OCA reports. I will say this is pretty average for this time of year, and we've reached out to all the counties, and I believe we'll be able to close this year out by the summertime. Are there any questions?
So these are clearance rates, reports as well, Megan? No?
These are just the monthly activity reports
I
that
gotcha.
qualify right now.
Back to you.
Thank you. All right, the next series of pages in the meeting materials would be grant modifications that have been requested. They're all fairly routine, so I'll just jump into page 32. The first one is for Bear County. TADC gave a grant last year for a multi-year improvement grant to Bear County for a division in their public defender office focused on non-citizen defendants, large part to ensure compliance with requirements under Padilla v. Kentucky. After the application was submitted, the county had a outside firm do a big salary analysis of county staff of the countywide project, and there was a certain class of administrative staff that where there was an across-the-board adjustment. And then in addition, the county did approve a cost of living adjustment. So this is making some adjustments to their salary to reflect those types of changes. The board had previously adopted some guidance on these kinds of requests, that if the salary action is part of a countywide review or adjustment, that it would generally be presumed to be approved provided funds are available. So we are recommending to increase the award by $10,269 to a total revised award amount of $328,199. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Edwin, I have a question. Is the concept of a non-citizen unit or your special provision for non-citizens, is that something that exists all over the state? I'm familiar with Padilla, but I wonder if this is just a Bear County thing. Do we have this everywhere?
So the Bear County had an existing public defender office and they have a number of non-citizen clients that are appointed to their office, and they thought it would be more efficient to have a unit that was kind of focused on representing those defendants who have many similar issues, that the practice would be more efficient to focus on those defendants. So it's really just kind of a administrative division that would be assisting them in handling clients that were already getting appointed to their office.
Judge, I have 4 lawyers dedicated to that. Dallas does. It's only in the bigger offices where you have lawyers on the ground doing that. So having them in Bear would be consistent with the other large urban counties. Other counties there is a service where people can call, and My Padilla is still around, right? Where they can call and get advice about immigration consequences. But we have them in our office, so it would be consistent with what we do.
the board has funded a series of basically Padilla specialists in several counties over the years. I believe Dallas, Fort Bend, Travis County have Padilla attorneys who do consultations in order to ensure compliance with Padilla v. Kentucky.
And I'd like to say this, in Harris County, this is offered to not only people in the public defender's office, it's a tremendous benefit to everyone in the county.
I have a question. When Chairman Smithy might be able to address this. When Operation Lone Star was funded, was there anything done with respect to venue and criminal proceedings for people who don't have a lawful residence in Texas? I mean, right now, I assume we're handling this in 254 counties.
You know, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I can find out.
So TIC does have a current grant program that goes through the Capital Area Private Defender Service. That's a statewide resource that Mr. Bunnan mentioned a moment ago. It's called My Padilla. But basically, criminal defense attorneys are able to access consultations regarding the collateral consequence, immigration-related collateral consequences of criminal pleas. So those services are provided through different channels. Larger counties often have found it more effective.
I guess I'm asking a broader question with respect to, I mean, when I was on the Fifth Court, I issued an opinion saying if you came in on a visitor's visa and then tried to file a divorce action saying I've established residence in this county, that you guys should pay to adjudicate my divorce. My conclusion for the court was you can't use our courts because you are not a resident of any county in this state. But if we have people that are being scooped up in Operation Lone Star who have got crimes, if they're, would it be, I'm putting this to Chairman Smithy, for a more efficient mechanism to determine where they reside for purposes of adjudicating the merits of their criminal offense. I guess it's, right now it's based on where the offense.
It's happening, yeah, where the offense is, which is those
Has to be that
several
way.
counties right there at the border is the main county. It's not happening in Harris County.
Yeah, I don't know anything different. I think primarily border counties and Harris County where we're seeing most of that.
But venue is driven by statute.
Yeah.
So any other questions about this request?
Yeah, I'll just say that the additional, complexity that Padilla imposes on representation of non-citizens in these cases is what it is. It's a question that was raised in my mind as I looked at this as to whether, and I understand things have happened in the past, but whether sort of formalizing, programs that might give the appearance that non-citizens are getting more services than citizens to people who, aren't well-versed in this. That's something we ought to think about whether that's the right way to present this. And whether perhaps the same resources can be provided in a way that wouldn't catch
It's the way I
eye
would
of somebody
present
who
it.
has their eye out for such things.
The way I would present it is if you don't do this now, you're setting yourself up for writs of habeas corpus later. So this is just.
On the merits of it, obviously that's a concern on the, how do we talk about it? How do we do it? How do we, how do we think about what we're doing? They're gonna have to do what they need to do on the ground in these places. Whether we should have this as a priority and put these sort of labels on what we're doing is a different question. And, I'm not raising it for a resolution today. It's just something that will be on my mind.
Well, wouldn't this be driven by a federal constitutional obligation to provide effective assistance with respect to the stuff that's gonna come to my court and if they're still here? I mean, I would think to the extent we need to marketing pitch for why we're doing this is
We have
our hands are
and we have
tied by
Padilla and we have to follow.
I think Jim.
Chief, you raise a good point. In Bear County, we have basically two defense delivery systems. We have the Managed Sign Counsel program that I oversee, where we contract with the private attorneys to provide these services. 90% of the cases go through, also make assignments to the public defender's office. The issue you raised is an issue that I had to address in front of Commissioner Court. The public defender's cases are handled by, a separate department. We work super closely. This really is like a Padilla compliance unit, and I had raised that issue with that office. They have a new chief defender, and they've subsequently kind of changed it because this just put like a huge red flag on it. And really what that office is doing, it has two attorneys, has an interpreter. So they're not giving preferential treatment to those persons who are non-citizens who've been accused in Bexar County. But what they're doing is kind of getting those, providing a certain level of expertise on navigating these issues with two attorneys that are dedicated. And the Padilla advisors also are occurring. One of the things that we're doing in Bexar County is, like many other counties, we're struggling with the jail population. And so this office is coordinating with ICE and back and forth. So it's, as our Padilla compliance attorney said, it's kind of getting people up to kind of the baseline. So they're actually not getting, but the way it's presented, I've had to address that in our commissioner's court a multitude of times. So I completely hear what you're saying, and really those issues, I was there when they had originally applied for it, but I didn't think of it until we started getting our elected body.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the obligations are what they are on the ground in these public defenders' offices. And, regardless of people's status in any form, they should be treated equally with their access to these services. And I'm trust that's what's going on. I'm making a point about, it's more about communications and you mentioned that raised a red flag. Why throw up a red flag if you don't need to? It's something I'd like us to be thinking about going forward.
Very good point. Thank you.
We do have a,
Is there a motion at this time to increase Bexar County's FY25 improvement grant?
And Judge, I'm going to abstain.
Oh,
I'll
that's
take
right.
the motion.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? All right, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Show me as abstaining, please.
Okay.
the next item is on page 34 of your meeting materials. This is regarding Refugio County. Refugio County has for several years contracted with Texas Rio Grande Public Defender, their regional indigent defense program, to provide public defender services under our sustainability grant program. In 2024, Refugio County decided to join with Jefferson, Lavaca, and Victoria counties to become part of the new, what's known as the Crossroads Area Regional Public Defender Office. That program was funded by TIDC in 2024, and it is still ramping up. So they have begun taking cases in all the counties served, but they have not yet gotten fully staffed. And so they cannot handle the caseload yet that they were designed to handle. So what Refugio, the grant that is currently in place for Refugio County has extended their funding to help them with their contract with Texas Rio Grande Public Defender until the new Victoria County-based program is staffed up and able to handle their caseload. We gave them a grant for the first 6 months of the year, anticipating that would they would be able to transition. By now, the staffing is still not to that point yet, and so they're asking for us to just continue to extend their current arrangement through the end of this fiscal year. I'll say that the cost for this is essentially offset because the grant that we've provided to Victoria County for the new program is not being drawn down remotely close to what we've offered because of the difficulty in filling all those attorney positions in that new program. So essentially, I think this is cost neutral, although we are increasing the particular grant to Refugio County. The existing grant to Victoria is not being drawn down as expected. So we do have a recommendation to extend the grant for 6 months and to add the funds to do so, which would be augmenting the current award by 46,166 to a revised total of 91,909. And have to read the motion if there are no questions.
Is there a motion? It's number 3 on your agenda.
Well, this is not. This is just monies to cover the 6 additional months.
That's correct. It's increasing the current grant, which was to cover the first 6 months of the fiscal year, to get them through the balance of the fiscal year.
The motion?
I would move to extend the term and increase the award.
All right, is there a second?
Sure.
Willie? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Next item is on page 37 of your meeting materials, and this is regarding the Regional Public Defender Office for capital cases with the local government corporation. The program had formerly been operated as a department of Lubbock County, then was transitioned to a local government corporation several years ago. TIDC's been providing this sustainability funding to this program since 2008. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's an opt-in program that's available to all but the largest 14 Texas counties. That's because it's the rural counties that struggle to find representation and to handle costs associated with death penalty litigation. And currently about 178 counties are participating in the program. So in exchange for an annual participation fee, if a county has an eligible capital murder case, the program provides a full capital defense team at no additional cost to the county. This program has been confronting persistent staffing challenges. They've lost a number of attorneys and they've had a number of vacancies. I believe half of the attorney positions have been vacant for an extended period of time. We do have Ray Keith, the Chief Defender of the RPDO Capital Program, here with us today. If you would like to hear some additional information about what's motivating their request. But essentially, the RPDO board has been reviewing the compensation structure to try to address the challenges of retention and recruiting for these open positions. And they will be coming back in connection with the renewal of the grant for 2026 with some requests for adjusting compensation. But in the meantime, they're requesting to reallocate some unused personnel budget that has resulted from the vacancies that they've experienced to provide 5% retention bonuses, essentially operating as a kind of retroactive cost of living adjustment, and also to implement a modest longevity pay program to its salary structure. These changes can be accomplished with a reallocation of the currently approved budget. They don't impact the amount of the grant award. And the budget also reallocates among line items to just kind of adjust to actuals for some of the other budget lines that have were slightly in need of adjustment. I'll pause here and ask if there are any questions. And if, as I mentioned, Mr. Keith is here who heads that program and can speak to the challenges in more detail if you'd like.
Anybody have any questions for Ray? I have a quick question, and maybe I don't need to really go into this now, but I would like to have something in the future with how many capital cases RPDO is now doing. You know, we're seeing along the state, a lot of the DAs are not prosecuting death penalty, and I don't know what your caseload was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. So do you see that as a lessening for you all?
I think, Judge, the way I would answer that is right now we do see a downward trend, and we are in clearly a trough in terms of our historical numbers. We have 13 active cases right now. 1 is pending a resolution, and we are monitoring about 5 cases around the state that have occurred in participating counties where we've not been appointed. And then historically, Judge, our peak was 34 or 35 cases. And so I think the most consistent number we would see was probably about 25. And then 2019, 2020, we started to see the decrease in numbers. And so we have been in what I would classify as a trough for about 4 years. And I think that that's tied to, I think, you're correct. I think prosecutors are not seeking death as frequently. Historically, our numbers have always been cyclical. The trough has always been followed by an increase, and then it's really been an up and down process from the numbers. And it is, at least for us right now, it is a mixed blessing in that the low case number we have now, given that we are at 50% of our line attorneys, we are fortunate that we are in a trough right now.
Right.
The ability to handle those.
I agree. Any other questions?
So attorney workload on those where is that compared to where it was 10 years ago? How is the trough coinciding with when the numbers were higher and you had more attorneys, and now the numbers are lower and you have less attorneys, or is the workload still about the same?
We have never been, unless I go back to the initial years of the program, which began in 2008. And so it began as one office, and it expanded over time from Lubbock and the Panhandle region. If you look at the map, it's essentially a counterclockwise expansion around the state to where we have 6 trial offices now. So other than those first couple of years when we were in Lubbock only, or when we made our first expansion to 2 offices, we have never been fully staffed. So I don't know exactly how to answer the question other than that when we have been at high numbers, we have been what I would call reasonably staffed. 30 over 30 cases, everyone's hair is on fire a little bit. But those were manageable under the staffing at the time. We have guidelines for individual attorneys' caseload. We do try to monitor workload as opposed to caseload, or workload is key for us. But ultimately, I think that when we were between 25 and 30, which we were for a long time, I think that was manageable. There are obviously instances where attorneys had too many cases. And so we don't have that problem now. Hopefully we will remain in the trough at least until we can address hiring. And I'm happy to follow up if I'm not answering.
Well,
your
it's
question.
feast or famine, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so while we're in the trough right now, I believe we have to add this because there's gonna come a time, as he said, cyclical, that it's gonna go up. So if no one has any other questions.
And I would just add that the way the program works, the program executes an interlocal agreement with all the participating counties, and they are contractually obligated when those cases come to be able to have the resources to step up. So while things have worked out, I think that one of the factors, in addition to just, you have to have some capacity to be able to pick up cases quickly. And so that's, it makes it a challenge to modulate the staff to be able to meet those contractual obligations, but that's a big part of the challenge.
All right, then I'm gonna make the motion to approve the RPDO's request at this time. Seconded by Alex, all in favor? All right, thank you.
Before we get off of this item, I did want to bring to y'all's attention that I worked with Ray to put a proposal to the Texas Supreme Court. I've heard back from Justice Busby on this to modify the rules in terms of lawyers being able to waive into Texas from out of state. Right now, there are a number of other states that allow for either an expedited or a more quick way of waiving in for attorneys who will practice at a public defender's office, in legal aid, in family representation. And so that proposal, I've passed it along to Justice Busby, and he's working with the state bar on this. And so I feel like we're at a competitive disadvantage right now compared to many other states in terms of the ability of lawyers to waive into Texas. Ray has had some, right now it's like 10 months to a year in order for someone to get waive in and get licensed. Ray's had a lawyers even longer than that. And so Ray's office is in a particular situation where I think they could benefit from that. So just want to let y'all know that's something that's going on too.
Thank you, Scott, and I appreciate that input, and I'm personally sympathetic to those concerns. I know Justice Busby is as well. It's something that the court will talk about, and I suppose it might involve the Board of Law Examiners. But ultimately, I think that falls to the court, and you know, we want to make sure that the way we regulate the practice of law in Texas is not artificially constricting the supply of legal services for all kinds of people, including indigent defendants and families and people who need lawyers and have trouble getting them. And we don't want regulation at the state level of the profession to be the reason that they can't find a lawyer. So we're thinking about that and working on that. Thank you.
All right, Edwin.
The next item is page 41 in your meeting book. This is a grant modification request from Wichita County. Wichita's had a public defender office for many years. They came to us in 2024 to create a division that would be focused on defendants with mental health challenges. And that was funded last year. This is a somewhat rare instance where the county is coming to us asking for a reduction in the amount of money that we approved for them. The division that we had funded in the original grant was for 3 positions: an attorney, a mental health caseworker, and an investigator. They've determined that in looking at the salaries, they've determined that the investigator position, they would like to retain that position, to transfer it off the grant, and to use some of the funds that are freed up under the grant budget to augment the salaries for the mental health caseworker and the mental health focused attorney. Based on the TIDC salary study, the 2024 TIDC salary study that we conducted, the proposed salaries are well in line with what would be expected for those types of positions. And so we are recommending approval of their request, which would reduce their award for this fiscal year by about $10,306 to a revised total of $129,600. We have a motion. I can read it.
I'll make that motion. Nobody ever gets its money back. So, I'll make that motion. All right, thank you. That's the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The last typical or standard grant modification request is on page 44 in your materials. Is from Medina County. Medina County hosts the Hill Country Regional Public Defender Office. The office is part of the Rural Regional Sustainability Program since 2021. Serves Kerr, Gillespie, Bandera, and Kendall counties. Their current office space in the Medina County Courthouse has the program's staff spread out across different floors in the courthouse. It's not an ideal situation. They are working with the county to relocate to another county building that's, I believe it's right across the street or very close to the courthouse, where they can have the staff together in the same office. They do have some make-ready costs associated with making that new space able to work for them. And so they're asking for the permission to just reallocate some of their existing approved budget to facilitate the costs associated with that office move. They have some slack in their budget because they've had a few positions that were vacant for some time this year. They have fortunately filled those positions and are now fully staffed again, but they did have enough slack in the budget to be able to reallocate some of that money to the costs associated with the relocation. So we do have a recommendation to approve a budget modification for Medina County's request for 2025 grant budget to reallocate across budget line items as outlined on page 45 of the meeting material.
Your motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And I will abstain from the vote.
Is that Evans?
Yeah.
Okay.
Judge Evans is a Bandera County judge. Would,
Right.
abstain. Thank you, Judge. Next items are related to our grant funding program for Operation Lone Star. I'm beginning on page 46. Scott, would you like me to?
I'll do it. So beginning on page 46, we are describing some changes that need to occur in the Operation Lone Star program. As we had mentioned earlier, arrests are down significantly over the past few months. And I think in part due to that, there is going to be a change to the Supreme Court's emergency order regarding indigent defense and the border security state of disaster. And our indigent defense program through Lone Star Defender Office has been, very much intertwined with that emergency order. So Chief Justice Blacklock, do you want to say a little something about the changes that you think will be coming regarding that emergency order?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Scott. So as you probably know, for the last 2.5 years or so, the court has issued an emergency order that's designed to facilitate indigent defense related to the high volume of cases generated by the Operation Lone Star along the border. And that order had been renewed every 2 months by Chief Justice Hecht. Once the court issues an emergency order, the Chief Justice has the option to renew it. If it's going to change, then that's something the whole court needs to do. That's how the statute reads. I became the chief in January, and it was brought to my attention sort of in late February that, this is going to expire, you should renew it. And my instinct was, well, maybe not. Let's think about that. What's going on? It's been a while. But at that time, there wasn't enough time to, assess the situation and sort of responsibly transition away from the court's emergency order as the vehicle for how indigent defense is approached with respect to Operation Lone Star. And so I said, I'll sign it for another couple of months, which lasts till May 1st. But then at that time, I asked Megan Lavoie and Scott and others to think about, a way to move this off of the court's plate and end reliance on an emergency order from the court as the way that this is handled. And I didn't know what the answer was going to be. I hoped that the answer would be what it now seems to be, which is that they've come back with the answer that the court's involvement is no longer needed and that there are resources available to counties that want them, that could be provided through the commission's existing statutory authority. And that's my very high level understanding of what the staff is proposing. I can't vouch for all the details of how that will work, and there may be some kinks that need to be worked out, but I am pretty confident that the proposal you're going to have before you is better. It's certainly better from my personal perspective than the court's continued issuance of emergency orders.
So there are a couple of options here that we are going to lay out that the counties can take advantage of in terms of how we want to move forward with the emergency order expiring on May 1st. So option one would involve the Lone Star Defender Office, who we've been funding for many years now, along with the Lubbock Private Defender Office, now Lone Star Defender Office. They would continue to be able to provide these services to counties who opt in basically to use them, to have an agreement between individual counties and Lone Star Defender Office to do what Lone Star Defender Office has been doing all along, appointing counsel, making sure that lawyers are available to these counties that don't have enough lawyers to pay counsel. So they would continue in that role, but what would be needed is individual agreements between those counties with emergency orders that have been using Lone Star Defender Office. There need to be individual agreements between the county and LSDO. There would need to be a change in the county's indigent defense plan to make it clear this is how these types of cases are going to be appointed and paid. And there also needs to be coordination between the counties, JP courts. I'm looking to Judge Woolley. Maybe Judge Woolley wants to help do some training of JPs on how to make this work. But, you know, there's things, the cases will be, you know, magistrated locally now. And so we need to make sure there's coordination of paperwork between those local JPs and Lone Star Defender Office. And that's how the Lone Star Defender option would work. LSDO, to be clear, also has, I don't know how many thousands of cases, but they do, I think, still have in the thousands of cases that have not been resolved yet, that they have appointed on already. And so they also need to be around to oversee those cases and make sure they are paid. So there's the existing offices that they'll handle, as well as the new cases. We'll have individual agreements between the counties and LSDO. Option 2 would be for those counties who feel like they have enough attorneys locally that they can just appoint locally and pay locally. And after the fact, they could come to TIDC and seek reimbursement for OLS eligible cases. And so that would be the option 2 that counties could choose. So assuming that this works for y'all, we're trying to put together some meetings with the judges who need to be apprised of this next week in order to let them know changes are coming and here are your options. And so please tell us which of these paths you would like to take. And, you know, the third option could be if they just want to pay for their cases on their own and not seek reimbursement, they're, you know, free to do that as well if they wanted to.
If they don't pick that up.
So that's the general plan. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this. There is oh, yes.
I would just like to suggest, since we do have a system in place and having worked with those counties previously in kind of other areas of the state, when we set up like the Caprock Regional Public Defender Office, I think it would be good for staff, and I know y'all are overextended, to really work closely with those counties. And like on a plan amendment, there's going to be folks that really don't know how to do that.
Yes.
So I think if we did like a model plan amendment, and you know, it's headed by a really quality attorney, Amrutha, and working closely with that, because what I would worry about is if counties say, oh, we're opt-out, we're not going to worry about that. If we look historically, I imagine in those jurisdictions, the appointment rate, like in misdemeanors, probably hovered between about 0 and maybe 10% tops. So there really wasn't, you know, a preference. So I just want to make sure that the system that has been put in place, we do our best. And I think it makes sense for it to be handled locally and through this rather than the Supreme Court. But I would like us to make sure that we assist those local jurisdictions so that they still have an effective defense delivery system, and that, you know, and closely with those counties.
Absolutely. Okay, we do have a motion because LSDO's grant needs to be modified slightly to make it clear that, you know, there's now going to be this, you know, county by county agreement type of situation. Amrutha Jindal, who is the director of Lone Star Defender Office, is also here, or on Zoom, excuse me, if anyone had any questions for her. But if not, there is a motion to modify their grant slightly to implement this change. Edwin?
I'll read the motion. So the motions associated with this, forgive us, are a bit long. We're just trying to make sure that we cover everything that's needed. So upon expiration of the Supreme Court of Texas emergency order relating to TIDC's Operation Lone Star Authority, motion to modify the FY24 Lone Star Defender Office grant number OLS 24002 upon request to allow LSDO to work with individual counties who may amend their local indigent defense plans to designate the Lone Star Defender Office as their managed assigned counsel program or public defender program for OLS cases.
Fair motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, any second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next item on page 48 is related. Scott, do you want me to? So TIDC currently has what we call the Extraordinary Disbursement Grant Program. This is when a county has an unusually high spike in their indigent defense costs. There is a mechanism for them to come to us and request some special reimbursement funding. What we're proposing here is for those counties who choose not to opt in to continue to use the program that we've set up for Operation Lone Star, we could just allow them to seek reimbursement for Operation Lone Star counties under a sort of special provision of our existing Extraordinary Disbursement Grant Program. So the proposed to be eligible for this program, we're really trying to fill in the gap that would be left by the program that we have been offering. And so we would offer this to Texas counties that have an OLS emergency declaration and have previously had their OLS cases appointed and funded directly through the TIDC funded program operation, initially by Lubbock Private Defender Office and more recently by Lone Star Defender Office. And unless otherwise approved by the TIDC board. So we recognize there may be some situations where we would want to bring back to the board something that fell outside of the eligibility guidance, but that, we just didn't foresee. The cost that we would propose to reimburse would be only indigent defense costs, of course. That would include attorney fees, investigator fees, expert witness fees, and other defense-specific litigation costs that have been approved by a court. The cases that would be eligible would be, of course, the human smuggling, the trafficking of persons cases, criminal trespass and evading arrest cases that are have an OLS nexus, as we say, and criminal charges that may stem from enforcement of SB 4. That's the illegal entry legislation that is currently in the courts. If that legislation goes into effect and there is enforcement of it, then those types of cases we would say would also be eligible, counties would also be eligible to seek reimbursement for those. We do believe that it's important because of some of the concerns that Mr. Bethke mentioned about the counties keeping up with procedural requirements, that the counties demonstrate compliance with statutes that have been on the books for many years regarding magistration proceedings, timely appointment of counsel, the transmission of requests, all of the front end requirements in statute regarding appointment of counsel. We think that it's important to communicate to counties that they need to be sure to be in compliance with the law on those provisions. And as far as the application procedure, we would just essentially do what we do with our current Extraordinary Disbursement Program. Counties would send us in their vouchers, their documentation of the expenses, sufficient documentation that would allow us to ensure, yes, this is an OLS case. And then we could provide reimbursement to them for those eligible cases.
By vote of the board or not?
So yes, we'd be bringing these forward to these
Just like the
requests.
extraordinary expenses?
That's right.
Okay, is
So-
there a motion?
Judge, I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Just kind of clarifying, would all counties be eligible even if they had opted in to the operation? Basically, we just passed a motion saying, hey, we're providing this structure that the counties can continue to participate so that there's not a disruption. So I'm just curious if those counties that opted in, I could see where, there may be expenses beyond with that jurisdiction. So my question is, are we be excluding those counties that opt in for the structure that we've set up, not allowing them to apply for the extraordinary?
Well, I think our intention is to give them two options and they need to pick one of the two options. There may be some special circumstance where some cases maybe fell through the cracks or something that a county that did opt into continuing to work with LSDO may have a case that they, for whatever reason, wasn't appointed locally that we would bring to the board. But I think the intention is that they can choose to continue on with our program as it's offered, or they can choose to seek reimbursement for local appointments.
From a policy standpoint, I'd be hesitant to approve that because I think that it provides an incentive to say, hey, we're not going to participate, and it would create additional administrative work on a team that's already kind of strapped. And we had a similar, and you'll recall, I think you were still with us, Ray could even talk to that. But in building out the regional public defender for capital cases, we had counties that decided not to opt in. And then, the following, 6 months later, they rolled the dice and there was a death penalty case. And then they're coming to the board. So I think when we put in place a thoughtful structure and a system, I don't like the idea of saying, oops, we can opt out and then, kind of see what happens. So
Interesting point of
support.
view, yeah.
So
Because they
you're-
do, they roll the dice and then they come back.
So are you proposing then that you think there should only be one option for counties? Or am I missing something and like if they choose option 2, they're not allowed to come back to option 1 or?
I'm saying option 2 is not needed because we have just approved option 1.
Okay.
And then we still have the extraordinary, so even if a county decided not to opt into it, we still have the regular extraordinary disbursement. So I don't think it's necessary. If option 1 didn't pass, then maybe we need to look at option 2. But since option 1 passed, I don't see the need for option 2.
So I'm more than happy to have a conversation with it, and I don't understand the mechanics of it as well as you do. But my discussion with Scott about the proposal and my approval of option 1 was connected to the existence of option 2. County flexibility seemed to me to be a good idea. But I'm certainly open to discussion and conversation about that, but just want to be upfront about my thinking.
Well, do we want to pass this to our next meeting? Have a little bit
No.
more information? All right, well, then is there?
Unless Chief Justice Blacklock wants to extend the emergency order
Right.
until after the next board meeting.
That would be nice.
To be clear, I do not intend to do that, and I don't intend to put that before the court. The court acts as a group. I will not be extending the order under the power of the Chief Justice. I cannot speak for the entire court, but plans should be made for the order not to exist after May the 1st.
So any more extension or discussion, Alex? Roy? Anyone? Is there a motion?
You want me to read the motion?
Sure.
Judge? Motion in connection with this is a motion upon expiration of the Supreme Court order of Texas emergency order related to TIDC's Operation Lone Star Authority. Motion to authorize staff to communicate a grant opportunity to counties currently served by TIDC's OLS Indigent Defense Program operated by Lone Star Defender Office, who may appoint counsel locally for OLS cases, that they may submit documentation and request reimbursement for OLS human smuggling cases, criminal trespass cases, evading cases, and criminal cases stemming from enforcement of SB 4 passed in the 88th session, 3rd special, under the TIDC Extraordinary Disbursement Grant Program.
Now is there a motion?
Can I ask a question before you have a motion? Should it say in there that, it sounds like they just have to ask and they're going to get the money. Is there something in there that should say as the budget allows or something like
So-
that?
What this authorizes us to do is communicate to them that they can apply and request for funds. And part of that communication would certainly be that reimbursement would depend upon TIDC having sufficient OLS program budget available. And so this is inviting them or notifying them that they are eligible to apply under certain circumstances, not that they would be automatically, it's not communicated as an entitlement or anything like that.
There is specific verbiage on page 49 that states reimbursement may be approved only if TIDC has sufficient funds available in its Operation Lone Star Indigent Defense budget. We have, at this point, there is $41 million in TIDC's budget for next biennium. There's also available, more than enough funds right now available in this current biennium as well. Jim, I hear where you're coming from. I also anticipate I will be getting some calls from some counties who may not for whatever, they may feel like they have enough attorneys and they can handle it themselves. And, you know, they would prefer to just appoint locally and pay, and they have the funds to pay locally. And please reimburse us for these added expenses. I mean, I would make the argument, it seems like you're saying, well, they can just apply under our existing extraordinary disbursement grant option. This, I think, puts some added meat on the bones in terms of added requirements, added documentation that they need. It gives us some guidance, you know, if they were to come to us for an extraordinary disbursement grant. We now have additional guidance here as to what kind of documentation they need to provide if they do want an extraordinary disbursement grant under this program.
And I, again, I haven't done an analysis or seen an analysis. How many counties is there, is part of it right now? 15?
At least 10 that are directly served by LSTO. I believe that's, I mean, we have Amruth on the call if we want to bring her, but it's somewhere 10
I
to
would be
12.
interested in Amrutha's perspective on whether, again, I didn't talk with Amruth, I just, you know, read through this and, so just we can have Amrutha weigh in. I'd be interested in her perspective.
If I might comment, the commission always has the ability to say no. If we think a county has gamed the system and we think that they're not being forthright, we can say, you know, we're not going to do it. We always have that ability.
Yeah, I think if we approve this today and some of Jim's concerns come to light, then we just
Not really.
roll it back.
Yep.
That is true. All of these grants will come to you at the next board meeting and future board meetings. We'll tell you what they've submitted. If we've had any problems in terms of the submission, to Judge Evans' point, yes, you always have authority to say no. Good point.
And as I said, when I was laying it out, there are probably gonna be kinks in this because it's new. I appreciate people, you know, trying to get it going on the timeline that we had. And I'm not insisting on, you know, any particular version of this long-term. I think we ought to be looking at it and making sure that it works and figuring it out as we go.
I think that based on where we are now, the case counts are very low. And that could change, of course, especially depending on what happens with SB4, but at this point, cases are very low.
But you're right, there are still counties that don't have a lot of lawyers and maybe they don't feel like LSDO provides a lot of benefits that I think not only paying for the cases up front, appointing the cases up front, making sure there's lawyers there. I am hopeful that all of those benefits are, they recognize them and they've been recognizing them for the last 3-4 years, and that they will continue to want to work with them.
Anything else? Is there a motion at this time on number 8? I'll
I
make
move approval.
Who did? Evans? All right.
Yes.
Judge Evans, I'll second his motion then. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Well, that's all of our grant modifications, and we're going to pivot to our fiscal monitoring update with Deborah Stewart on.
The fiscal monitoring report can be found on pages 51 to 55 of the meeting notebook. Now, this report outlines all the activity for the fiscal year, but I just kind of want to summarize the activities since the December board meeting. There was one fiscal monitoring trip that was taken. This trip covered 2 counties, Starr and Jim Hogg County, and we did this trip in conjunction with the policy team out there, and it's ongoing at this time. Now, reports that have been issued, we had final reports issued to Henderson and Ector County, and then we had an initial report and a final report issued to Erath County. And then in addition to some of these reviews that we've got going on, I was asked to assist in the the closeout of the OLS, Operation Lone Star, grant to the LPBO, which is Lubbock Private Defense Office. That we, the team has all been working on IDR desk reviews. Indigent Defense Expenditure Reports, we do the desk reviews every year. So that's going to be part of this last quarter as well. And then one last thing I wanted to report on, counties submit their comprehensive annual financial reports and single audits every year if they've got grants at a certain level. And before this meeting, I had one county submit their reports. This was B County. Bring this up. B County did have the TIDC sustainability grant that we gave them listed as their major program on the single audit. And the outside auditor that did that reported no compliance findings or any other issues. So I kind of like to report on that. So that's the end of my report. If anybody has any questions, we can go on to the next 10. That's Bill.
Good morning. For the improvement team, we've continued our work on Operation Lone Star. Linda Gonzalez on my team, and I've worked very closely with Scott, with Edwin and his team, and the Office of Court Administration. I think we covered most of the activity for Operation Lone Star. Linda makes, to answer your question, Mr. Bethke, fairly frequent trips to the counties that are served by LSDO. Works closely with the local officials, and we had already drafted early on in OLS some language for plan amendments that we'll be updating and getting to them. And then, as Scott mentioned, we've got meetings scheduled that OCA has facilitated with all of the affected counties coming up next week. Great. So we will be getting that communication and being sure the word gets out to them. One of the other duties of the improvement team, as Edwin mentioned earlier, is planning studies. When a county looks at their indigent defense system and decides that they want to make changes to it, any county official can come to us and ask us to prepare a proposal for a managed assigned counsel system for a public defender's office. And then we have a questionnaire we send to the counties. We work with them, going to some of Commissioner Covey's questions to see what kind of structure do they want. Do they want this to be a county department? Do they want it to be a contract with a nonprofit agency? Do they want to look at some other type of contract? What type of cases would they like to have handled? Would this be felonies? Would it be misdemeanors? Would it include appeals? In the case of a public defender's office, because of conflicts of interest, they can't do all the cases. So what percentage of cases would be their goal? Then we'll look at that. We will look at TIDC's caseload guidelines. We'll get the information about what the county's current pay structure is, what is the current market value in that area with surrounding counties, frequently with regional public defenders. We'll look at not only the host county and what their structure is for their prosecutors and county attorneys, but for neighboring counties. And then put together a proposal that ultimately, should the county decide they want to go forward with it, becomes a blueprint for them to come to us for an improvement grant, which limits the lift they need to do in preparing that grant, and then ultimately works with Edwin and his team. And then we work with them to build that public defender's office, that managed assigned counsel program, and get it off the ground. Another part of our work is technical assistance, which includes launching those programs. We've worked with a number of offices during this quarter. A lot of it's been with High Plains, which is now, as of yesterday, I believe has hired all but one misdemeanor attorney. So is very actively getting off the ground and serving their counties. Another piece I wanted to highlight is stakeholder manuals that we're preparing based on feedback from county officials and from public defense leaders on, it would have been great when I walked into this job to know what I didn't know. Who do I need to get in touch with? What do I need to learn? What do I need to know about practices in the area? Those we are hoping to have out and start getting out to our leaders starting in early summer this year. So they'll be ready for any new offices funded at the June board meeting that would then begin operation in the fall. And then the last item I wanted to highlight is our Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program, or FIDDLE. This is a partnership between TIDC, the Harris County Public Defender's Office, TCDLA, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, and Gideon's Promise to train new attorneys coming into public defense work, whether they're in private practice, taking appointed cases, whether they're with a firm, or whether they're at a public defender's office. It starts off with an intensive 2-week training that quite frankly puts those attorneys through scenarios that become the equivalent of 4 or 5 years of what they'd run into in the real world. From learning to build a relationship with the client, learning to tell the client stories, to advocate effectively in the courtroom, and deal with a lot of the ethical dilemmas that come up they don't prepare you for in law school. And we have our 4th class graduating in April. Our 5th class will have the returner session in April as well. And we are hoping to come to the board with a proposal for our 6th class at the June board meeting. And then the last item, I will turn it over to Kristen to talk about our recruitment.
Thanks, Bill. So we do quite a bit of recruitment work here. We're trying to really encourage new folks into this work, both on the criminal juvenile delinquency side of taking indigent defense cases, and then also the family protection side of cases. And so we do a handful of things there to kind of help provide that access, introduce people to the work in a few different ways. We also help our leaders across the state find opportunities to go to law schools and recruit. So one thing that we do is we have created and we continue to update and maintain a recruitment calendar that reflects all of the Texas law school recruitment opportunities. And so the intent there is that instead of having to go to all the different websites of the 10 different law schools here in the state, they can go to one calendar, see what's coming up, and be able to sign up for those opportunities to reach students and to recruit for their offices. We also keep them informed of the various recruitment programs and any changes around that. This spring specifically, we've partnered with both Law School Career Services as well as law student organizations at a handful of law schools across the state. I think we had 5 different law schools and went back a couple times to a few of those. And we put on programs, we table, we really introduce folks to the work. And so part of that this spring, we were able to go. Crystal was one of the people who went with me for a few of those and also went by herself to a few schools. I also want to thank Cody Huffman on our team, as well as Ashley De La Garza, and then Kenesha Brown on our team. They've all partnered together to go on these different trips to really talk to people about how you get involved in the work. Some of the questions we get from students when we go include questions about law student debt is a huge one. It's a huge question in students' minds. The cost of law school is very expensive, and frankly, I feel like they don't stop raising the cost of law school. And so that's a big question we get from folks as well. If I do this work, how do I handle my student loan debt? Obviously, the location of our law schools here in Texas are mostly in large, more urban areas. And so that's also a limiting factor, especially for rural recruitment. So when we take these maps to show all of these different offices across the state of Texas that are public defense or managed assigned counsel programs that they can interact with. And students often ask, wow, like what is this big kind of blob of the same color here? And those are our rural regional offices. And so that's kind of one other thing that I feel like is sometimes a barrier for students is like, well, I want to do this work, but I have no ties to this rural community. I don't necessarily know what to expect when I get out there even. So having offices that they can go out and intern in potentially during their school career has been a big kind of base for students. They get the experience in those communities. They get to know what it's like to live in those communities. They get introduced to any other lawyers and have a place to start from, which is really beneficial. And students are really drawn to that. We do have some students who ask about private practice. We always get at least a few students that ask about that. And that's one that's interesting, kind of their core questions usually rotate around a few different things. It's hard to start practice right out of law school. It's intimidating. We hear that from students a lot of like, well, is there a guide on how to get started on this? Who do I talk to? And especially because those law schools are in those urban areas, those are kind of those areas where they're making those networks and connections to attorneys. And so, if they are going to go into private practice, it often is they're drawn to the places they go to law school or to an urban area where they maybe already have connections through law school. Pay is always a question as well from students. We had an event just this past week at St. Mary's. We had a student who is working under an attorney right now who takes appointed cases as part of private practice. And he was asking great questions around, okay, well, how do I get started? How do I join, managed sign council program or get on the wheel? How does that look long-term for me? Building a practice, being able to pay my bills, pay off my student debt. He was asking all those types of questions. And then location, I already kind of talked about. So for that perspective, I think we had some great outreach this year. This spring, excuse me. I do want to highlight, we went to the Oklahoma Public Service Pathways Career Fair. Now, this is a brand new career fair in Oklahoma. It is co-hosted by all 3 law schools in Oklahoma. So that's the University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma City University, and the University of Tulsa. So it's co-hosted by all 3 of those, as well as Oklahoma's Access to Justice Foundation. It was on a Saturday morning, and it was hosted at the State Bar building downtown. And it was a great event. There was really good turnout. There was lots of different organizations there. They were all in public service, and we had some really great conversations with law students talking about, oh, I'm from Texas. I want to come back, and I really want to do this work. How do I make those connections? Who can I talk to? We also had some great conversations with students who are not from Texas, who said, I want to come work in Texas. How do I get into this work? This is what I'm passionate about doing. Here are some areas maybe I'm looking to potentially move to. So I had great conversations there, as well as I've got a few more emails I need to respond to from those students, which is something that I think speaks volumes. Oftentimes students may be intimidated, even if you give them your card and say, hey, email me. I'm happy to connect you with resources. Sometimes that can be an intimidating next step for them, or frankly, if they're in law school, they may be a little busy right now. But I had already several students reach out to me about opportunities to do this work in Texas, just from that one career fair in Oklahoma. So we had some great outreach this spring. I want to shout out, we did some great work at St. Mary's. Crystal just got back from Texas Tech and doing a wonderful event out there around family protection representation, as well as participating in the first virtual career fair with the National Association Council for Children. So lots of good outreach.
I just want to just say real quickly, this work that they're doing is really God's work, and the impact that you're having is so critical, because we really, even though we've been doing it for 20 years, we're still at the infancy. So like when I see a job posting at one of the other MAC offices or public defender offices, I got to put up locks around, because I've lost like 3 attorneys to Concho Valley, but like with the Fiddle program, I've hired 3 or 4, and those attorneys it's like they've gotten like an apprenticeship already. So when they're coming in, they kind of hit the ground running, because economically, we're not able to compete with the private side. So it's like, we've got to incentivize. So the work that you're doing locally and going to the law schools, thank you, because it is making a difference, and we have to build that base. And the only way we're going to do it is kind of like what y'all are doing. So.
All right, policy and standards.
Okay.
Flip note version, Joel.
Joel. If you could please turn to page 61 for a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since the December board meeting, we've issued 1 report to Lubbock, and we've received responses to reports from 2 counties. That's Ector and Montgomery. We have several reports in the hopper that we're hoping to get out very soon, and hopefully be able to report to you what's happened in June. If you could turn to the next page, 62, we have a list of some upcoming upcoming site activity. The one thing I want to highlight is next Thursday, Ashley De La Garza and I are going to go to Maverick County. This is a technical assistance visit. They've recently hired a new indigent defense coordinator through a TIDC improvement grant. This is greatly needed down there, and we want to make sure she understands what she's doing, but we're also trying to have a meeting with local stakeholders to be sure she's able to rule on all council requests. This is a problem that we've had down there for well over a decade, and we're hoping to address. Which goes to the next agenda item, which is Maverick County monitoring. You may have seen about a week and a half ago, the New York Times issued a story about Maverick County. It's a pretty long article. It's listed here, and it was reprinted in the San Antonio Express News and the Texas Tribune, possibly some other sources as well. But the article is very critical of the attorney appointment process in Maverick County. It highlights other issues like people getting lost in the jail. But we've had a long history of monitoring in Maverick and we've hoped to address things, but we've had very limited success. So we have on page 73 a list of our historical monitoring activities. And this began in 2008. When we first went down there, people could not request counsel before a magistrate. And we said you have to be able to allow defendants to request counsel. They changed their form and magistrates actually ask, do you want to request counsel? But that's where we've kind of been stuck because since then, many people request counsel, but those requests, I'm not sure if they don't always get to the trial court. I don't think they always do, but I'm not sure to what level. But there's very few appointments. You'll have hundreds of counsel requests, but just a smidge of appointments. And so there's been a breakdown in what's happening in between. Since that initial review in 2008, we've had 4 on-site follow-up reviews, and we've kind of just been stuck. In 2022, we went to the Policies and Standards Committee for some direction. And they gave us direction to ask for monthly data reports from Maverick and Zavala counties. The reports began in October 2022. The data's been somewhat consistent. I have 2 pages of data on pages 77 and 78. It's not all of the historical reporting, but it's just what I could reasonably fit on 1 page. But with this new indigent defense coordinator, we're hoping that the reporting is more accurate and more timely and can help us resolve where the actual root problems exist.
Or there will be no more problems because of them, right?
Yeah. Well, there's hundreds of requests, so it's quite possible they will need something like a public defender office because they're going to need attorneys that will take those appointments.
Yes, and to that point, we have received a letter of interest from Maverick County to establish a regional public defender office down there and apply for a grant at the June board meeting. So assuming that we do get funds from the legislature, then y'all will be able to consider that.
Just want to mention in today's New York Times, that same reporter has another lengthy article. It's not about Maverick, it's about indigent defense generally in Texas. So I think and somehow Jeff Burkhart had his picture in it.
I will say that recent article highlights one of our programs that we funded, a regional program up in the Panhandle run by Chief Public Defender Jason Howell. That's been very successful. So the extent that there's some bad news in some of the reporting, there's also some highlighting of some of our success stories, which I think is welcome.
Last is complaint.
Yes, on page 80, I'll be very quick. There's been 26 complaints since the last meeting. Fortunately, the numbers have declined a bit over the last year. We had a real surge last year that has faded. Many of them are out of scope, but we do provide referral resources for those complainants. It's often about other parts of the criminal justice system. And the big thing is we're working with our partners at the Public Policy Research Institute to enhance the complaints website to provide more information to potential complainants, as well as streamline our processing of those complaints to point them to appropriate resources, as well as follow up on those that are in scope related to the appointment process.
That's all for policy.
Okay, Crystal?
Right, well, I know we're past 12. I don't want y'all to think that this is not important stuff. Please get excited for the last page of the book. Thank you, Chief. I know the Chief's really excited about this, and I'm really glad that you're here, Chief, to talk about this. So before I give my report, Judge Mederi did ask that I give just a little brief history of the work here at TIDC and what we're talking about when we talk about family protection.
That was before we were over noon.
Well, Jim sent me a note too. He wants me to give, I'll keep it brief, but we do have some new members here. So to give you a very quick rewind of how this is even at TIDC. So as y'all know, historically, TIDC has done work in the criminal indigent defense space. About 3.5 years ago, TIDC got involved on behalf of the Judicial Council to collect data. So some legislation passed a few sessions ago that required counties to start reporting to the Judicial Council information about court appointments in CPS cases, so lawyers for children and parents. Also, quick, brief overview, there's not a US constitutional right to counsel for parents and children in CPS cases, but there are statutory rights to counsel found in the Family Code. There are also lots of cases out there from the US Constitution, constitutional law about rights to parent, your right to parent and all of those things. But we do have clear rights to counsel in our state for indigent parents and children in these cases. But prior to 2021, we did not really know what was happening in these cases. There was no data being collected. We didn't really know how much was being spent. We didn't know what the counties were doing. It's a county by county system, much like in criminal. But we're a little behind criminal. We don't have a lot of offices. We don't have a single managed assigned counsel system right now to do this work. It's mostly entirely run by locally run court-appointed lists of private assigned counsel, essentially. So we started gathering data in 21. It wasn't really assigned to TIDC. We were doing the work to help the judicial council out. That's when I came on. The information we gathered was really no big surprise to the people that have done this work for a while. It's inconsistent throughout the state. What's happening, depends on where you are, how much is being spent and what's going on. So last session, a bill was passed to give TIDC official authority to start doing similar work to the work we've done in the criminal space and start doing it in the child protection space. And that was SB 2120, which was very exciting. The one huge bummer was that there was no funds appropriated to do the work. So we started officially doing the work after the passage of that bill. I became the director of our division, which had half a person on it for a while. Sadly, we've lost Natalie. So now it's back to me. A lot of people have kind of been coming in and helping though. But we were able to, because we had that authority in that bill, we were able to do some legislative work this summer. So we did a legislative work group. One of the bills that came out of that is actually moving through the Senate right now. There was a hearing in front of Senate Jurisprudence. It's on a fee schedule bill because we don't have clear laws on the fee schedules for attorneys who take court appointments in CPS cases. So we're trying to fix that. And that has also been filed in the House as well, but it has not been yet heard in front of a committee. So we're hoping that will get through. The other thing we're able to do was submit an LAR, which Scott mentioned in his report. And no one has able to, in the past, no one has ever been able to make a specific request on behalf of, we call it family protection representation here, but court appointments in CPS cases. So that was also a big deal to be able to ask for that. Unfortunately, the House has put all of it in Article 11 and the Senate has given us nothing. It's really unfortunate because we already have some existing statutes on the books that would allow the formation of managed assigned counsels, as well as offices of parent representation and child representation. Right now in Texas, there's only one office of child rep and one office of parent rep. They're both in Travis County. We have no others. And those laws have been on the books for almost a decade at this point. And I think part of the reason why is there are no funds to support the building of those systems. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to start building those systems like we have done on the public defense side. We just need some money because the counties really are not able to build those systems themselves. So it's not over yet, but hopefully we get something through this session. So quick overview of my report, and I don't know if anyone has questions before I move on. But we are doing lots of data collection. We've been doing this for years now. The Indigent Defense Expenditure Report we have been working on. Because the website has been fully redesigned, it looks so much better and it's going to be so much better going forward, but it has taken longer for us to get through our desk reviews. Bless you. The preliminary reports show that spending is actually down from last year from the counties, but that could change depending on when we're finished with all of our reviews. We also, for the first time this year, asked for an optional attorney detail report. So on the criminal side, we get the detail report, and that shows us how much each attorney who's been appointed in that county is paid. It's very informative and really interesting to look at. We have not asked for that before in family protection. We've kind of been slow rolling data collection out to the counties. Kind of each year we're sort of slowly adding on so that we don't overwhelm the counties. But this year we made it optional to do the attorney level detail report, and some counties did submit that. Next year we're gonna make that mandatory. So that will also be very informative to know more about what's going on down on the ground with the attorneys.
We also have.
Crystal, I'm sorry to interrupt, but so I see on this page, counties spent $56 million this year, $62 million last year. I'm assuming that this is included within the 453 million that we saw earlier for statewide spending, because I'm assuming when auditors give the reports, they're reporting all appointed council payments together. Is that correct, or?
No, this is bifurcated out, so we're on a special family rep island, so we're special here. So when Edwin gives that report, that's criminal only. So that's the money that's spent in the criminal space for adult criminal cases and juvenile delinquency cases. So these amounts kind of we're looking at separately. So that's completely separate from that $400 million amount. So when you're looking at total spending of the counties to provide indigent representation, it's actually more than that.
Add the two.
Right, when you add them together, right.
Okay, I guess I wasn't aware that the county auditors kept those amounts separate. I thought they just reported all indigent defense spending total, but you're saying no, they're actually required to segregate out criminal and family?
Yes, that's correct, which is great so that we can see the differences in spending. So there's a report, and in this new iteration of the website, we've actually created separate modules, so it's much easier for everyone. There's a clear criminal module, there's a clear family protection module, and everything gets submitted separately.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, good question. Thank you, Justice. Other real quick, so this is the second year of doing the attorney practice time report, which is also newer reporting. Historically, attorneys have only had to report their practice time for criminal and juvenile cases for appointments. We added this on last year to include family protection representation. And as of the writing of this report, we had slightly more than last year. 1,110 attorneys submitted a practice time report. We don't think that's everybody, but considering it's the second year, I don't think that's, it's a pretty decent number to start looking at the landscape of who's taking these cases. Other things to know, so Title IV-E, also give a really brief background on this. Some of y'all may be familiar, some of you may not be. There is this federal money, it's through Title IV-E, it's part of the Social Security Code, and it's a federal reimbursement program that counties can request to get money back for paying for attorneys for children and parents. So historically, for many, many years, counties have been doing this to get reimbursement to provide legal representation to the department. So in some counties in Texas, a county or district attorney's office will represent the Department of Family and Protective Services. And then in a lot of counties, they just have their in-house regional attorneys doing that representation. But nearly all of the counties that provide representation through the DA or CA's office have been getting reimbursement through Title IV-E. It's a percentage reimbursement, it's not dollar for dollar. It's about 50%, and then there's an additional percentage rate based on the number of foster care children in that county. But in the last 5 years or so, the federal government opened this reimbursement up to also include the cost of attorneys for children and parents, which is a huge deal. Unfortunately, Texas has really underutilized that money, and on average, it's about 20 counties or so that are getting their reimbursement for providing representation for kids and parents. So some of you that were here at the board meeting in December probably remember it was crazy, but we got the board passed an MOU. So we have this really wonderful MOU in place to work with the department to improve their Title IV-E reimbursement system. We got the signed copy back from DFPS in January. Everyone over there that needed to sign it signed off. So we have a signed final copy. Thanks to everybody who had input. I know, Megan, you were looking at it at the last minute, but I do appreciate it. So that's a huge step. But there's a lot of work to do. We've had multiple meetings with the department since then. Right now, we're trying to figure out what's happening behind the scenes. Where are the pain points? How can we streamline this? And then we do have a long-term plan to potentially integrate that into our data reporting website. And hopefully at some point get every county who's entitled to reimbursement to get that. I've been working with Travis County specifically to try to get their reimbursement. We're gonna try to do it the old school way with the papers and the spreadsheets for now, but we're learning a lot, and I think it's gonna take some time, but I think we're gonna really do some good with that MOU. And the department has been really great to work with. They've been very open with us. Last thing, really quick, we did have a mentorship program this past year. We were thinking, what can we do with no money. And we were able to do kind of a low budget mentorship program that Natalie Corvington ran. She did a wonderful job with it. I'm really sad that she's gone now. It finished up in last month, and we've had wonderful trainings through the course of it. We have sent out surveys and closure communications. Our hope was that we'd be able to send applications out this summer for the new year of mentorship, a mentorship program. We have to see what happens with staffing and the ledge and if we'll have capacity or not. Hopefully we will have someone, and if we do, then we'll have another program next year. So that was it. Sorry, I know it's a lot, but if anyone has questions.
But it was incredibly exciting. Thank you.
Crystal, if I could take 30 seconds, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I mentioned this in the State of the Judiciary, the need for better representation of parents in these cases. CPS is extremely difficult to navigate. Even if one of us were caught up in it, we would need help. And, you know, most of the people who are caught up in it need a lot more help than that and have a hard time getting it. And we see a wide variety of quality of representation of appointed counsel in the cases that we get at the court, and you can tell in the way the case has been litigated earlier on that exists, you know, at all levels. And it's a problem. You know, the court has called termination of parental rights the civil death penalty. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I would much rather go to prison for a while than have my children taken from me. And I think the deprivation of liberty that we're talking about in these cases is extraordinary. And of course, it has to happen in some cases when parents have failed as badly as some parents do. But just because CPS says it should happen doesn't mean it should. And the only way courts can tell the difference is with competent counsel to represent the parents. And so it's my hope that, you know, whether it's this session or later, that making sure that parents are well represented in these cases, parents who need counsel paid for by the state, that we make this a priority and think about it in the same way that we think about indigent criminal defense.
I have a quick question to follow up on that. If you said only 20 counties in Texas right now are actively pursuing federal reimbursement that's available to them.
It's give or take, depending on the day. Some people drop off and add, but it's around 20.
I have to communicate with all the counties, their options with respect to the wind down of Operation Lone Star, the emergency order. Would it make sense to have some sort of communication with them at the same time that there are these funds available to them to obtain competent counsel and parental termination proceedings?
I think a lot of counties maybe know about it. I think our biggest issue right now is coming up with this system that would be easy for the counties to use. And so the way it logistically works is that right now you have to go completely through DFPS. They're the 4E agency. And so they don't have a great system right now that's really efficient for an onslaught of like 200 counties to come to them. So that's one thing we're working on, is trying to streamline things. They've asked me to train them on some things. So I would love to do a Zoom training immediately. I don't know that we're quite there yet. You know, if counties want to individually reach out to me, I can certainly, you know, connect the dots. But eventually our long-term goal is to systematize this and have yearly trainings on it and make it the same thing for everybody, and everyone's on the same page for how to get the money back.
I want to make just a quick observation if I can. This is my first meeting. I think it's your first meeting, Jimmy. It is, I think we're probably going to be different from each of our respective predecessors. And it's a little awkward for me hearing and thinking about matters that are likely to come before me in a capacity that's different than the one that I have right now. It's a lot easier for me to talk about parental termination cases now that I don't. But I really appreciate, I'm sure, Jimmy, we both really appreciate everything that you're doing. I will probably get more comfortable engaging, but while the legislature's in session, if I still have Chairman Smithy, and this county-based system that we have coming post-Civil War presents a lot of challenges on the obtaining consistent, adequate counsel. The state has a role, the legislature's in session right now. And on the criminal side, and again, I don't want to get too far out in front of myself, there are implications for that on the prosecution side as well. And we need a professional judiciary and we need professional lawyers. And I think more frankly, on my side of it than yours, Jimmy, it's presenting challenges that are on a volume level, really difficult to manage. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I'm sure I'll be more engaged in the next meeting. in terms of what I'm saying out loud.
Then thank you all very much. So next meeting, you gotta put it on your calendars. It's June 27th here in person. Is there any new business? Any public comment? At this time, we will adjourn then.